Hello, everyone. I'm already there. Dennis will be there in a second. Turning down the music a little bit. Always surprising these days, because the music is AI music. We have an AI topic today, so it's fine to talk about that. Talking about incentives today. Management incentives, in particular, because we had the idea of we need to talk about incentives regarding how to implement a good workflow for AI. And here is the man who invented all this, basically the topic for today. Dennis.
Oh no, you made me responsible for some invention. I just heard.
Yes.
Well, we've probably it's an old concept, like OG extreme programming, I would say, and you've probably heard this before, that organizations and teams are usually representations of their incentive structures, right? So, and you might have heard this from micromanagement or OKRs or any kind of financial motivation inside an org. These are all incentives. And generally what you want and what you communicate you want verbally is less important than the explicit and implicit incentives in your org. So the incentives are usually things that people don't think about very actively. It's just something in the room. People create an incentive. Hey, we start at 5 p.m. If I now tell you, we'll start at 5 p.m., agenda, first 10 minutes, waiting for people to show up. If that's what my agenda looks like, I've just created an explicit incentive for people to be late, to be not on time. Right? And that's a very benign example, but you can also think about it as, hey, if you're late, you gotta pay some trivial amount. Now I just incentivize people to have an excuse to show up late because they can just pay me a little bit and they can be as late as they want. So usually, I'm bringing these examples up because this is something that everybody can relate to. Usually, this happens very quickly. And generally, what you create as what seems to be person communicating, creating an agenda or creating a list as a well-meaning stick or motivation or pressure or gatekeeping can actually be interpreted as an incentive to do the opposite. So if I tell you have to pay me $2 if you're late to the standoff, that might incentivize the team to justify being late to the standoff. Well, you said it's okay if I pay you. I'm happy paying you, right? Like I'm happy paying you, so I don't have to, so that I can show up to work 2 hours later. No problem, right? Maybe that is happening, and I've seen these, and these are real examples. I've experienced it.
Payment. Okay.
Yeah, like a tip jar in the office. It's like, hey, if you're late to the stand-up, you need to add to the tip jar, and we go for beers and on Friday. And then,
okay, this kind of, yeah. So okay, as long as it's just a tip, it's okay, right?
Yeah.
For the pay cut. Yeah.
Or it might be a pay cut. It might be that you're incentivizing on call with, hey, nobody likes doing on call, so we will pay you a little tip. Instead of real on-call duty, we will just give you some extra.
But in most countries, especially in Europe, that is something very not obligatory. So you can make this as a funny thing, but you can't enforce that.
Right? Yes. But maybe some people don't know it, right? There's a lot of incentives, where engineers often aren't well experienced enough, I would say, to set boundaries correctly, which puts them at a disadvantage and risk to be taken advantage of by these kinds of incentives. That's why I wanted to have this conversation today, because it goes hand in hand with various passive-aggressive behaviors, mobbing behaviors, or just having a manager who's an asshole and they just want to squeeze out as much productivity as possible with hacks, micromanagement, pressure, any kind of emotional manipulation. These things happen. This is real. And if you want to be a very good engineer, you can't pretend this isn't happening. You need to know how to stand up for yourself. And even more important, you need to stand up for cultural change in your org when it doesn't affect you. What this means is that it's enough that you see it being done to somebody else. That is the moment you speak up and say, hey, this is not okay. It's like him having to work yesterday till 7 p.m. was not okay. And he says, no, that's fine. It's like, no, that's not fine. Because now you're setting an incentive, a precedent, that when you do it, it's fine. So it should also be fine that I do it. I didn't take that accountability and responsibility on. So this is a problem that I want to address and talk about and solve today. Right? Because what would the manager do? A well-meaning, but maybe unexperienced manager, he would praise the person to stay up. Right? It's like, hey, thanks for burning the midnight oil yesterday. Thanks for fixing the production issue at 7 p.m. or at 2 a.m. in the morning. Right? So these things happen very quickly. And they can create implicit expectations and implicit incentives that if people start following, they can, I wouldn't say standardize, but it can become a sort of silent agreement among the team. And then you onboard new people, monkey see, monkey do, and it stays. And then it will, and then 2 years later, you wonder why the work environment has become toxic. Right? And it's these incentives that open up those doors or close certain ones.
It's actually, for me, those things were not incentives. It was more like a distortion of the currents of the culture by cheating and exploiting people in a way which is indirect to create the outcome you actually want to have. So so for me, incentive was always very direct. So you make an offer like, we're going to do this if you do that, and we're going to do typical incentive. You go out with the people in the evening, something like that, eat pizza or go for a bowling game or something like that. So it is for me, this term incentive is more this positive way of doing things, because the idea behind that is to do something for the entirety of the team, not for a single person. So I never came to the idea that an incentive is actually for a single person. That's new for me, but it makes sense because that you describe it that way. But for me, this is more an exploitation process, which happens there.
It depends.
And I know that very well. So I was in an environment like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all were. I think, people in chat, I don't know, our audience, we had some technical issues. I'm sorry for the chat. I don't know if chat is set up correctly. If you're in chat or if you're on Substack, if you could comment if you've ever been in such an environment.
I
just opened up Substack, so I just opened up Substack, so I apologize if I missed some messages. So from the perspective of personal incentives, you can also phrase it as, hey, this person has started acting weirdly in my team. They were super driven, and then something happened, and now they're super silent. What happened? Right? And now you can treat this two different ways. You can create an incentive where it's like, okay, it's okay, we will tolerate it, or it's not okay, we will not tolerate it. And it's possible that we did something, we, the organization, to create emotional distress in a person that caused them now to underperform. Right? If we now tell them, hey, we pissed you off and now you underperform, I will now give you the stick. Right? I will now reprimand you for underperforming, even though I caused it. And that is now an incentive for them to start looking for another job. Right? That's what I'm talking about, is that the stance you take to certain issues, that's why I meant that it is individuated, because what I'm talking about is the emotional reaction to each individual to the incentive, not so much the structural hierarchy of the, if it's, like free labor or some kind of like overtime policy or like weird exploitation at the workplace. And I'm not so much interested in the systematization of this function. I'm more interested in how to navigate it from like a managerial perspective and how to navigate it from an individual perspective. Of if you get demotivated at work, now we need to talk about, okay, how do we set the correct incentive to motivate this person? Because that is an interesting question, right?
What I wouldn't suppress is intrinsic motivation to become better as an isolated developer who wants to do more than others. It is absolutely fine to do so, but as a manager, you need to become aware of that by reflecting the situation and make the right calls. Like, you need to then point out that this person is actually going another route than others, and others had the chance as well, to make clear that this is not an exploitation. This is basically the path of this person, because that person aims for a new role, for example, and we are working towards that. Make that a open story, and then it makes sense for the others, because the others don't feel like they need to be the protagonist in another story.
Exactly.
And that is something which you can do, which you have in power to do as a manager. Don't just exploit it by telling everyone like, look, I give now a voucher for Amazon or something like that to that person because that person was staying later and fixed something. Sometimes we need to fix things. It should be normal to do so. The question would be more like, if others were rejecting to do that and this person wasn't, you have other issues you need to fix. Is why have others rejected and this person not? So but you shouldn't use it in a toxic way to say, look how good this person is, and look how bad you were, and that at best indirect with a form of incentive for that person. That makes sense. So that is distorted as hell. You need to be very honest here. This is very important, I think.
So generally, dysfunctional incentives that I have observed as a coach, shadowing a team or working with leaders across multiple teams, are like the two most harmful ones is rewarding heroics, which is what we just talked about, where business as usual is boring and nobody talks about it. But when there's an issue, the hero who steps up gets praised the next day. It's like, hey, thanks for sacrificing your evening and saving production, right? That people think this is a positive because it feels like they're doing you a favor should the organization thanks them. But it's actually a form of systemic dysfunction that is worth talking about. And the other one is sort of this promotional angst where you hire somebody and then they're not performing, and then you're either actively questioning the seniority level or you're flat out telling them that, oh, like, you're a senior engineer, but back in my day, a senior engineer was this, right? So I wouldn't call this behavior senior where I'm from, right? So it is these kinds of incentives that create a sort of either judgmental hierarchy, or they create a transactional exchange of trust and transactional exchange of validation, where somebody says, you're lesser than, I don't consider this senior behavior, and you need to prove yourself to me, and I will judge you. Right? These are all very dysfunctional behavior patterns, and I'm guilty of this. I've done this more times than I'm not proud of it. Like it's annoying because you just found yourself, because you think, oh, this will help them stay motivated, or it is the least bad thing I could do in the situation. It's like, oh, we had a production outage at 7 p.m. Oh, let's praise the person who, and it's like, it's always this, damn it, I did it again, right? Like I incentivize the hero.
Because you cannot really do something much more in the situation. You can. But the action
I don't agree with that stance.
No, I agree, because it's wrong. If you were the fifth time in that situation, you are failing over and over again, so you need to fix something that you don't get into a situation anymore.
So you mean to say that if it happens
The
once,
situation is bad anyway, so you
Agreed,
don't make a
agreed.
good situation out of that, period. So you need to reflect what happens. You need to be very honest, as I said about that. Put it as you expect to have mature people. They can talk in a mature way. So that happened, that person fixed it, but it's actually not what we want to do. Let's talk about how we can get it done. That is the only thing I can. That's not good. That's the start to fix something which is very bad. So this is how I would, because if you say it's good, you can make a good outcome. You have already failed again, because it is not good.
And you might also implicitly incentivize, well, we don't need to fix it because it's cheaper to just have that person fix it after working hours or on a Saturday, because they're at their laptop all the time anyway.
Yeah, I think that's one of the, if I take a longer thought about that, is probably the most common issue.
Yes.
With
and whatever org
things,
you're in, there is somebody like that on your team, and you know exactly who it is.
Because I think that's not like even not the manager thing. It's very often that people want to be that person, but they don't want to be the leadership person. They just want to be a hero today. I have nothing else to do. I'm over motivated, and let's be praised, right?
What I'm conscious of is that not only should we not praise that kind of behavior, at least not elevate it beyond everyday achievement, but we should also dissuade that person from that behavior. Like, if they want to work on a Saturday evening and fix production, we should tell them, no, you're not allowed. Like, I'm not paying you. You're not allowed to. So I don't want you to. Right? Like, the stance should be, unless I've asked you to work, I don't want you to work, and I don't want you to make promises about production being up just because.
In startups, you won't see this, but in matured company, because it is actually not the healthiest thing in startup to do that, because it's like Stephen Pressfield would describe it. It's like the birthplace of something. There's chaos anyway, so just treat it like you think it is. But as soon as you have a grown-up organization of 5 people or more, then you need to make sure that there is some form of social rule. There is a social baseline, cultural baseline. So you cannot allow people in a regulated environment to work outside the regulation constantly. It must be a exception and treated like this, and discussed it and reported like this, that if it happens twice, and it's like you have ongoingly a person who can fix things, but only wants to fix that in the evening because that person wants to be the hero, and this person does nothing to actually prevent this from happening. That person must be punished instead of being praised. That is the good cause. That is good leadership. Right?
Yes. And that's hard because instinctively it feels weird to punish somebody who just sacrificed their time. Right? And instinctively and you have to make a decision on the spot. Like the very next day or the next working day, you have to make if you're the leader of this team, you have to make your stance known. And it can be very difficult because it can slip. People can just praise him, and then you have to be the bad guy, or people can ignore it, or people can just be in that state of, oh, okay, we're still fixing. Look how useful we are. We're still fixing that issue from Saturday. These are all concerning things, and they're usually very volatile. They're like this very irrational, emotional, in the heat of the moment thing. That it is good for you to have a calm predisposition towards. Like, you need to know how you will react in this situation. My recommendation to leaders will be that you make the decision of how you will react in advance, far in advance.
You need to, that's very important.
That you just prepare yourself. If this happens, this will be my reaction. And if you are in a larger, so if you're going from startup to scale up, that you even have it in some kind of recommendation or some kind of cultural guidebook of, look, if this happens, please do this. Please, yes, give them some praise, thank them, show gratitude, but also dissuade the behavior. It's a systemic problem. So rather than saying, hey, thanks for staying up all night, let's give him a clap, he's a hero, let's say, thanks for that. But at the same time, we got lucky. This is a problem, and we got lucky, and we shouldn't rely on luck for this kind of situation to be resolved. It affects our uptime. It affects our SLAs with our business partners. We need to do better, and we can, and we will. Right? So that, but it's very, very important to have that ready, to have that, to not be emotional in the moment where it's like, I'm not gonna be the bad guy, and then you want to fit in, or you are the bad guy and you just want to be the,
That should never be a concern for you as a leadership person, a manager at all. So if you fail to make a decision because you are afraid to be finger pointed at by your own employees, you are wrong in the position, you should leave. That is what you should do, because you harm other people in that moment. As soon as you harm someone, you need to go.
It's very difficult in so not all organizations have rigid hierarchies. So in smaller organizations especially, it might be difficult to figure out who it is you're reporting to. So there might be actually people who carry informal influence, and they might have power in a way that isn't strictly legalized in the management vertical, in the management hierarchy. So it's possible that you might have somebody outside of your vertical be very influential in your sphere, and there might be disagreements. Or another example, you might have peers above you in the vertical. For example, your manager and your skip disagree on the situation. What to do now, right? So your manager rewards the behavior, your skip disagrees with your manager's decision, right? This is very typical. In like, okay, well, the manager is like, yeah,
up to the manager then.
My team was correct, but then he's protecting from pressure. But then the CTO says no.
It's pretty clear what you need to do then. It's not unclear. It's absolutely clear. You go to the manager above you and make clear that it needs to change. Otherwise, you can't work there. So it is like the responsibility of a good leadership person is, first of all, upwards, not downwards, upwards. Many people think you're a manager, you have now direct reports. No, you need to protect the direct reports by providing them a safe space to work and make sure it is. And if you cannot have the influence upwards, you cannot have this protective security for them. So you can't execute. It's simple as that. It is like, that's actually one of the things I do with CTOs, especially CTOs who are not CTOs, engineering managers and CTOs, right? Who actually have no hand in budget decisions, in management, in people decisions. It's more like they make recommendations. And this is one of the things we are working on very early on. It is by starting from journaling, starting from commitment in the morning, reflection, just first. And as soon as you understand yourself, you can start to understand the situation. If you don't understand yourself, how do you react, and these kind of things, you won't make a change anywhere. And that's the reason why people think like, oh, I see so many CTOs out there wasting and procrastinating with helping specific people in a way where they know they don't really have influence on that person. That person is problematic anyway, and they put 100% of their time into one position because they don't want to change or confront anything which is actually feels like a challenge to them, like the people above them is a challenge for them. So that is when a leader is not mature. And that is a danger for the people below that. And people realize that, and this is very often what we see in these organizations, is that the people below that actually communicating to the manager of the actual manager instead of the manager themselves, because this manager is nothing else than a puppet. Not because of the hierarchy idea, because of the person itself. It doesn't want to take the responsibility, but no one is removing that person or accelerating this person. And that is the reason why I personally think that self-leadership is the very first thing which determines if you actually lead or not. If you have no self-leadership, you cannot be a leader effectively. Simple.
I often see
a manager, yes, not a leader.
I often see this nowadays with two initiatives. One is AI rollout, where incentives are being pushed for AI usage. For hey, you're slow, you'll be faster if I force you to use Claude. Like that's the sort of spiel of the current AI token usage zeitgeist. And then the second one is this sort of I wouldn't call it farce, but this disillusionment of committee-based ownership. You know those push-based sprint plannings is, I think, the softest ways to sort of paraphrase it, where leaders might complain or individuals might complain that they don't have ownership over anything. Now, from engineers' perspective, it's usually, I need to refactor, but I'm not allowed to. I don't have time. I never get time ownership to refactor. And a leader from voicing the same frustration would be, hey, my engineers never show initiative. Like, I have to tell them to do everything. And usually, the tools that these kinds of organizations use, which is usually committees, are reinforcing this. So it's very difficult to get out of, because you think, oh, my people are not accountable, so I have to micromanage them. And in micromanaging them, you make them more dependent on your micromanagement, rather than, like you go in with this idea that, oh, okay, it's a temporary must, like it's a necessary evil for the short term to save the project. But what it really does is that it just makes it impossible to work with this kind of person in this way forever, because it creates this relationship where they will not take ownership of something unless you tell them to do it. So this happens naturally and completely accidentally, in my experience, in push-based committees, where engineers don't get to decide what they work on. They go to a meeting and then somebody tells them what to work on, right? And then those leaders are the same leaders who then complain that their engineers aren't showing initiative, or that they aren't showing that they're never negotiating with them, right? So and it's very difficult. It's very difficult to navigate that kind of situation, because it requires active pushback from both parties. Right.
I agree for both parties, because we always phrase it like the manager is doing that, it's a master of puppet, these kind of things, or a deadline-driven person, a micromanager. A lot of bad words there. We always say this is not a leader, and that's true. So in that moment, that the initiative should come from the leadership person to create an environment where this makes sense, right? To do it like that bottom-up works. So you need to not stand in the way and not take away ownership before it actually can be taken. But when we talk of a team of 4 people with a summation of 80 years of experience, it's a little bit like, yeah, leadership should do that, but you as well, right? It's like there is no reason, but you shouldn't speak up.
Yes.
It is this victimhood thing,
or
right?
at the very least have the backbone to not work there.
Yeah, one of those. But you can't. You ask that person, like, have you asked about that? Yeah, when? 2 years ago. It's a little bit like, I actually, and the asking was at the coffee machine while the person was talking to someone else. So it was not really a question. It was more an excuse for yourself to never ask again because ego told you to. And I think that's important, that you should try to change something always. And if it really doesn't work, it's outside of your control and influence. So you can leave. There is no point of wasting any more time there. But if that would happen, then the manager would be actually forced to do something, because there would be no one there anymore, and you would be having a healthy environment. But no one is doing that, because I don't want to change jobs. Fear of change is higher than actually enduring the situation where you think you are not in an ownership situation. And that's the problem is with fear of change is one of the strongest we have. Not fear in terms of it's creating a direct fear in that moment, but it is invoking the resistance to change and the ego. So you have
and
1 million
it escalates. It's a little bit of hesitation at first, or a little bit of probing, and then somebody gets shut down maybe too harshly, and then it escalates further into some kind of stigmatization of certain topics of, hey, every time we talk about this, we get into a fight, so let's stop talking about this because it's pointless, right? And then it creates this sort of imbalanced attitude where certain topics of discussion are taboo, or they require a certain setting, or they require a certain meeting setup, and that can very quickly result in toxic behavior, right? So the toxic behaviors in software like tech organizations, software organizations, that's our focus, software engineering, are usually, so toxicity is usually a result of unresolved trauma that happened in the workplace, like either this workplace or you brought it from the previous workplace. And what do I mean by unresolved trauma is that there was something that happened that upset you in the workplace, and there was some incentive, implicit or explicit, that prevented you from speaking about it, right? So the toxicity is a result of the action and the inability to process it. So you're not allowed to speak about it, right? So there was some, I don't know, there was some crunch time on a Saturday 2 years ago, and there was some heavy words exchanged, and you disagreed with it, you did it anyway, and then you never talked about it. That's that combination, that's the perfect storm for a toxic environment, for a detached or an implicitly abusive setup between those relationships of the.
To give you a little bit of a perspective for that one from another angle is that most people think like toxic managers are standing up in the morning and think like, how can I be toxic? Like this. Most toxicity actually happens because people simply don't reflect what is actually going on. Toleration, yes. Avoid, yes. Be too kind, these yes. kind of things, because sometimes it is like, this is the reason why I'm so often this in the coaching scene and in the CTO scene is this empathy thing. Mm-hmm. Empathy is important. It is, but it's one single aspect of leadership. It is one single aspect of the human condition. It is not the human condition. So it's like people, that's a counter reaction towards the toxicity we faced in the last decades. So because of that, we actually have the idea that we need to be more empathic. So if we are that, we have less toxicity. Mm-hmm. That is not true. Sometimes it helps, but sometimes it helps to use the empathy you have and make an argument about that to actually wake up people. Sometimes you need to discuss the things. The things need to be discussed in a friendly and fair way. And it's not, empathy shouldn't be like everyone shouldn't be involved, don't get too close to the people, leave their room, leave the introverts be the introverts, and everyone must even be more introverted. It's like introversion. I'm an introvert, but that's more a trait of how I'm working. It is not an excuse that I can act introvert as an introvert in a team. I'm part of the team. I signed up for a team, so I need to work with the team. So I need to get out of my isolation and at least communicate with the people to a degree that is healthy for everyone. Otherwise, I am toxic. And the same as with an extrovert, a person who is continuously doing things must reflect to not harm others by doing that, because it's so used to talk all day long that everyone have so many patterns of, especially when there's a leadership or an influential alpha person, then every word of that person, which is a lot, right, will create opinions. Opinions create biases, and biases create emotional attachment, and that create problems. We need to get out the emotions. That's my problem with empathy, because empathy is reading emotions. And as long as you cannot read emotions, as long as you start to become emotional about reading emotions, you are in a spiral down. And this is what you need to avoid. So sometimes you need to make decisions, and reflection is mostly about reasoning, not empathy, which means that you need to really communicate in a way that everyone understands that this makes sense now that we talk about that. No one will be harmed. Everyone will be fine. And no one is, I don't as a manager, I don't get close to you right now. I don't harm you, but we need to talk. We are still a team. I cannot tolerate people who are not working or who are not willing to work inside this community. So if you say, no, I'm like this, I will work outside because it's my right. Yeah, it's your right, but not in our company. Please
One
go.
of the worst things that I've often see transpire in well-meaning organizations is retrospectives where you have this like large group, this large committee, and you create an anonymized mad, sad, glad board about people venting. And then there's something really impactful, emotional that impacted one person. And whether or not you'll talk about it depends on how many votes it gets on the board, right? So it is that sort of lean coffee format for for basically therapeutic cultural issues within the org. And that can be very harmful, especially if there's a lot of it. Because if you're in a startup setting and you have dozens of issues every week, then there's more things to learn from than you can process in a single session. So you need to have multiple of those sessions, and you actually need to put them into practice. But if you do like a retro once every 2 weeks, then it's possible that you will have 40 items on the board, and then you will filter down to 3, and maybe you'll talk about 2, and maybe you'll not take action on any of them. And that can be very harmful, right? Because the surfacing of it and then not doing anything about it can be very harmful, because it creates a lot of incentive that, yes, this will happen. And by talking about it and not doing anything, we normalize it, right? We normalize that this is happening. It creates sort of stigma to say, no, like we discussed it. That's just how it is. And now this normalization creates an incentive for it to continue. It's like, no, let's do the devil we know. Like, let's do it the way we did it last time, because at least, like, if it's going to be painful, let's optimize the pain.
What I introduced for that is, so I'm using that for myself in a mentorship, actually, for one-on-one and private purposes, but I've offered that to a team because I actually wanted to do that publicly. But a team asked me because they knew about that, and a leadership person was actually doing that, and we went into journaling with each individual, how that actually works in a systematic way, not in a waffle blah blah way, like a child, right? It is like a system. Commitment in the morning, reflection in the evening. And the interesting part was that the team by itself, without me, was deciding to use this method exactly for what you just said. So instead of having a session, this team was actively reflecting one problem a day as a team, absolutely neutral. So they were really using philosophical methods to really reason about what happened, what do we need to do to prevent this. And there was absolutely no blame, because everyone treated that as a person as they would talk to themselves. And that was very, very nice to see that this actually happened, because that wasn't intended by me. But I learned in that moment that this method is actually usable there as well. And I want to try that more often, because that's basically, instead of this mirror book is actually a form of self-help, self-therapy to get clarity again when you are stuck in noise and you get a little bit depressive because of that. So it's not like it's a tool to get you a daily form of clarity back, right? And not suffering from don't know where you stick, dilemmas, these kind of things. And of course, it is transferable to others as well. And I think that teams should do that more often. And I don't think that the managers should solve problems for others. The manager should make sure that others solve their problems. I think that's one of the most important aspects in mentoring for me anyway, that today I don't help people anymore to fix AWS, Docker skills or something like that. They all do them themselves. I don't do these kind of things. People always come because of that to me. And after the second session, we talk about the personal issues.
Because they're used to somebody in power gatekeeping.
Exactly. It is like, as you said, they're waiting for someone to solve their problems, right? And then you make just clear that you can do it yourself. You are capable. You are in the industry for 30 years. So please tell me, what don't you understand about Docker, right? Yeah, it's an abstract. No, you don't want to, because someone else in your company is dominating that topic and you don't want to get close. That's the issue, right? So, and suddenly 1 week after, that person is completely referring about and make a presentation about Docker, no problem, in front of me. You know, it's like, you know everything, so what's the issue? Yeah, I don't really know. It's like,
and it's
no.
surprising how often this happens on shared infra. So database schema, database infra, message queues, Docker images, any kind of AppSec or build tooling. These small issues creep up very quickly. Even the format of a README file or Claude skills nowadays.
You've changed the Claude skills. Oh, and then someone hears that and will never make a change to Claude skill, because that person don't want to be pointed out in any form of PR or something like that.
We had some comments by Weber. Let's go through that. Put it on the screen.
They are on screen actually, but not all of them.
Yeah, I think. Did you double paste one of them?
No, it's the bot, which is. Oh, did I? Maybe I did.
So the first one was this one. Oh wait, is how it works? Yeah. So Weber mentioned, I've been a part of such a committee. We call me an AI officer. I think every organization nowadays has AI officers. Like, there is a heavy push for AI usage in our industry.
Let's say I need to get into it, because it is my sorry, my stoic mind comes through. So well, when you have a team of 10 people, let's just assume you have a team of 10 engineers, right? And the 10 engineers are engineers, so they are not like gardeners. Don't know what they do there, right? And you have one person who takes the role of doing something so important as a management thing that everyone else is just waiting for that person. What happens? Why is not everyone just doing 10%, and then you have 100%, and everyone is doing that at the same time together? So I don't understand the idea. In German companies, it's everywhere. You always have this one person who is responsible for security. One person is responsible for 500 engineers.
Yeah.
What the fuck? What was that? And you ask an engineer of those 500, and they know nothing about security. It's like, it doesn't make sense to me. I just wanted to point it out. It's no offense here or something like that. I don't understand why companies act like that. And if you have a facilitator, okay, but not an officer. An officer is actually it's a managerial role. You need a facilitator, right?
It's funny, and Weber mentions people give too much credit to specialists. It's a mental block, I guess. Another such role I can think of, it's data steward, I think, when it comes to MDM. MDM being, I don't know the acronym. Middle management.
These days it could be markdown management.
or middleware, or mess data, mobile device management. I don't know. Just let us know which MDM, metadata management. There we go. I knew it was data management of some kind.
There is always something new in acronyms to learn in IT. Always.
One interesting bit is that it happened frequently enough for me to spot a pattern where I come into an organization and I came in after an agile coach left, and I recently started using the engineering coach title as well, and I say to everybody, look, I'm the resident coach, or I'm the engineering coach. I'll come to you. Like, I won't talk to you for the first 3 weeks. I will shadow calls. We will do some one-on-ones, coffee talk, and you'll notice I'm here when the impact starts happening. And they're like, do you want to run the sprint planning? Right? Because they come to me with expectations of Dennis is the one guy who does planning in this company. It's like no. It's like, why do you need sprint planning? It's like, Dennis, do you want to do sprint planning? No. And I say, no, I think you should cancel the sprint planning. So, does it work? No, then I don't want to facilitate it.
That was something interesting as well. So I saw that in another company where an agile coach came in. That agile coach made the planning for a month, then passed over, or 2 months or something like that, and then passed over this role to another person in the company, and everyone else was basically excluded entirely from the planning
process. Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And everyone is a little bit like, okay, we should now be agile, but all I need to do, no engineer become agile. Every engineer just become, I need to read what there is and try to develop like it is written in those 2 sentences in the ticket. That's all I know. That's all my agility. That's so far away from agile, right?
And it's yes, it is. And agile really doesn't have any. Oh, I hate that I use that word. So I'm sorry. I don't want to go there. Hang on. So there is that aspect of people attribute some centralization of power with my presence. It's like Dennis will facilitate something, or Dennis will run some kind of meeting. And they're then shocked or surprised when we have conversations in the nature of how's the organization doing? Like, I talked to a senior engineer and I asked them, how's the organization doing? How do we make money? Somebody explain that to me, please. How are we doing on that? And what would we like to improve? And which part of that are you responsible for? How can I help you with that? And they're like, have you seen our sprint planning? and it's usually this complete disconnect, because I'm not there to facilitate a meeting. I'm there to help them hold themselves accountable and each other to making process improvement, right? And usually the pattern is they come to me, they complain, and then I turn it around and say, okay, well, what are we doing about that? Because it can't be true that you're right and you're justified in complaining about it, and complaining is helpful, right? So either you're right and we need to urgently do something, or you complaining is a problem. But both things can't be true.
Yeah.
It can't be true that you're wrong and you complaining is somehow good for morale, or good for you, or your health, or my health, or anybody's health in the organization.
Complaining is anyway, the complaining is a little bit like, complaining is a form of action you do if you do it right. So
it's a low quality frustration venting mechanism, but if you don't channel it and resolve what you're complaining about, then the complaining will actually tie you to the circumstances that produce the thing that you're complaining about.
But that's the issue. So if complaining stems from the subconscious mind and is basically based on emotions and unfiltered, that is
usually the emotion of powerlessness. I hate that it's like this and it has to be like this, and I don't see anything what I can do.
You can intercept that, right? Like Cypress interceptors, like from an API, rephrase that as you think it should be, and instead of complaining, right, you have a complaint, but you can make that a positive feedback or critique on something, but not a complaint by complaining, because the complaining is most often something unfiltered coming out of you. As you said, you want to vent, you want to make room, but actually you create more problems emotionally because of that. So you need to vent more, which doesn't make sense. You want to change something instead of doing that. So that, again, there were self-leadership again. That means you need to practice self-control, and not only the manager, everyone. So it is not okay if an employee see that the manager is doing something wrong. There is no reason to complain. Make a feedback, make statement, make a formal complaint about that. Make something based on action and not reaction out of that to improve the situation, not attack a person because of your ego. Simple.
So true. So true.
More comments.
Viewer says, I'm in trouble because it took 1.5 years to create a self-managed team and autopilot systems, and I cannot predict a date by when the bugs per month will hit a certain number. There's huge impatience lately. Don't you see it around you? I can see the impatience happening with just general market trends and sort of this whole AI-induced productivity wishes. Like people are. I feel like in general leaders in our industry are hallucinating things into being. Like they're like, oh, Claude tells me like we should be able to operate faster. Why can't we? And they don't question that assumption. It's like, hey, the people who are selling us AI tokens are telling us we could be more productive if we use their AI more. Like, why why isn't it working for us? And I feel like, because there is some merit to it, right? You can automate certain things which are annoying, but in general, AI usage will come from novel usage. So you will find interesting problems that are unique to your system to improve, and usually it's the annoying stuff. It's not the I have a sprint plan and Claude creates a beautiful sprint plan. Like that's not worth solving. What's worth solving?
You can't use Claude anyway for anything which is related to time, same as any AI. So ask an AI about a task when it's done. It's absolutely weird what comes out. So I've done that, I don't know, some month ago, just to test out. So I was asking like, oh, that sounds complicated. How long will this take? I assumed Claude would think how much time it takes for it to implement it in our system. And it says something about, maybe for that 1 week, for that 2 days, for that 3 days. And I pressed enter, accept, and it was done in 5 minutes, right? It's like, I don't know exactly what it was actually thinking there anyway, but you cannot use AI to predict something. It doesn't work. It never worked for me, actually. It is like, time is nothing for AI somehow. It doesn't
And
work.
also not modeled to solve that kind of problem. You know,
No,
like
it's not.
It's very difficult to reason
No,
about
but OpenAI does the same. It's like they give you something, you need to really explicitly ask that is
Codex, you mean?
that action. No, I mean AI models in general. Yeah. So if you take about, this is like they have a weird understanding of how humans actually doing work. This is very generalized, very strange. So it's not like you can really use it for some prediction.
This reminds me of you know, on the topic of incentives and AI specifically. This reminds me of the book The Design of Design by Fred Brooks. People know him for the Mythical Man Month, but I find The Design of Design to be a much better book, because it talks about not about how it doesn't talk about specifically how to design one problem, but what the design process is meant to solve, right? So the design process, because usually with architects and with AI and with, you know, Claude's plan mode, like those markdown files that are shockingly pervasive in our industry, I see them more and more often in ticketing software of all places, where people just paste a Claude. Like it got so bad that I just visually recognize the format, you know, like the Claude Plan MD, like it's exactly 600 words.
Yeah, with an ASCII screen design.
Yeah, with ASCII tables. I mean, I cannot visually just immediately brain parse it. Because this is by Fred Brooks, the book Design of Design. Because organizationally, we need to ask ourselves, what is the purpose of design? The design process, right? Because a lot of people will think, oh, the purpose of design or architecture is for me to state my opinion and then lock it in because I wrote it down. And a lot of teams are using design as such a tool of whoever writes the ADR gets to lock it in. You know, like it's mine. It's my idea, that one. Or
I will live forever in this ADR.
It will live forever in this ADR.
My legacy.
Or the other way around, where I don't know how to make the decision, so I pose the question in written form, and you get to fill out the answer, and then you are responsible for whatever you produced, right? So it is this transactional tool for handing off accountability, and rather than perceiving it as no, I wrote down what seemed to be the correct solution. You need to implement it the way I've written it down. Like that's the agreement of the design process, because otherwise it doesn't work. Same thing with PR, right? Like the design of design. If you think about why did we design the PR process in such a way? Well, because it allows developers to collaborate and learn. But if you open up a PR and then I leave you comments and you do nothing, or if I'm being rude to you in the process, then we didn't really accomplish anything with the PR. You could have just merged, right? So opening up the PR was a waste of time, because if we're just going to disrespect each other, or the PR is so large that I can't possibly give you feedback, then it's a waste of time.
Yeah, if you really don't want to have feedback,
yeah, just make the PR very large.
Post as much as you can, as many files as you can at the same time. It's looking good to me, right?
Yes, yes.
Always. It is absolute. It's 100% hit rate, actually.
So, coming back to design of design, the purpose of the design process is to create a shared understanding, so that when I look at the problem and you look at the problem, we decide together to elevate this. Like we agree on what the signals are and what the noise is. So the whole purpose of a design process, or a plan, or a roadmap, or a sprint planning, is so that we can all agree on what is important and what is background noise, so that we can all agree on what we're optimizing for. Because then once we have established this agreement, work can happen, like the execution, the flow, following the pipeline, following the process can happen without renegotiating what the plan is, at least until we learn new information, until we close feedback loops and create new data or create new learnings. And it is the purpose of any kind of design is to make that process of learning, of exchanging our understanding, smoother, faster, shorter, richer. Sometimes you need to develop a language to be able to talk about important details.
English.
No, but it can be an engineer talks in C# and a accountant talks in double bookkeeping, and they just don't get along.
Yeah, they don't speak English. Speak an agnostic language, but there's nothing to do with your profession. That's very important. That's actually how you get at Agile, is that you want to connect the user with the actual developer again. Mm-hmm. And for doing that, you need to speak English, or the language you're actually speaking in a native form.
Yeah. So what's important? So ultimately, what these kinds of incentive structures come down to is to figure out, hey, why are we having the meeting in this format? Hey, why are we having this discussion in this format? Like, what is the purpose? What do we want to achieve? Why are we pushing AI incentives? Why would we punish AI usage? What is important to us? Like, what part of the code is important to us? What part of the product is important to us? It is these things that are worth writing down so that we can establish a mutual agreement. I find that a lot of documentation, especially now since it's a little bit more automated with Claude and other tools, generally the exchange is such between different contributors in the software team is that we write things down so that we figure out where we disagree, which is an interesting explorative process, but it is not constructive on its own. Like, we need to come to an agreement. It's like, hey, okay, we disagree. Are we doing A or B? We're doing A. Thank you. Moving on, right? So, like, that process is very important. This idea of, oh, we have different ideas. Okay, which one are we doing? Is it important? No. Okay, then whoever does it the way they decide. Is it important? Okay, then we need to decide in advance, right? And then that might be the difference between low-level design decisions and high-level architecture decisions if they are productivity enabling. I often find myself drawn to committees of staff engineers or executives where they're not quite sure about certain incentives. And then they end up arguing with each other about, hey, no, I don't like this, or I don't like that, or I think we should do this, or I think we should do that, and I think we should do this. And we keep coming to this incentive structure of, look, like, you're all creating incentives where anybody speaks up, you are looking for problems with what they said. And generally, the healthier approach would be help them make their case reversible. And if it's reversible, then we don't need to discuss it. So help them make their case reversible. And if it turns out that their case is irreversible, then we discuss it. Right? And create that kind of incentive structure so that people do reversible decisions on their own, and then they report on their findings. And that is productivity enabling, especially in like high level, like far, like it might have, like, decisions might have long time horizons, or they might have just a lot of uncertainty and fuzziness, so that there is this element of, because Claude won't tell you this. Claude will just tell you, oh yeah, here's a plan for the next 9 months about, and then at line 7, I can see the hallucination pick up and it went into stupid mode. But ultimately, organizational friction has everything to do with indecision, with slow decisions, with too many people brain dumping and sort of dumping data onto the table, like putting more cards onto the table without really enriching the space, without really helping people navigate their own accountability, so that they can separate out their incentive structures of delegating authority, delegating influence, rather than just delegating the labor. It's like, I have made the decision, you please execute my decision. Like, that's boring. Like, that's the worst kind of incentive, right? Because that's how you incentivize somebody to be codependent on you forever, and they can't work faster than you can make decisions. And if you can't make bold decisions, then they will never be a productive member of that team. So figuring out how to create incentive structures where you can freely delegate authority, influence. You can use your own influence to help somebody build their own. That is a good incentive to set. It's like, how can I help you grow in your org? If you're a staff level, or if you're sort of along the seam of, you might be in product, but you need to help an engineer navigate the data space, or maybe you might be in data and you need to help them navigate, I don't know, risk aversion from the engineering team about some like heavy re-architecting. These are the incentives that are worth putting down. So how do we help people unblock themselves or each other, rather than the negative incentives, which is gatekeeping and rules and committees and, send me the plan and then we will tear it apart. It's like, we'll poke holes into it until it leaks.
I slowly but steady need to move on my journey through the day.
Special thanks to 𝗶𝗰𝗲, very active on Substack. Thank you for your commentary. He did leave a link on. He shared some agents with us. Thank you for that. 𝗶𝗰𝗲 mentions sharing skills and agents between our team members have created great leverage. We essentially codify our learning from retros using these. Yes, it's very important to. I find it to be productivity enabling for people to share their setups, for people to share how they're using Claude, or to just share like fresh ideas from the trenches of what they're doing with these tools.
I still believe that these tools, that's not believing, that's an observation, that these tools are the future right now, the future way of working. So it makes sense to share as much as we can what worked and what doesn't, to actually get to the point where we slowly but steady get to the point where we talk about standards like Docker is or something like that. And it absolutely makes sense to do that. because that is how standards evolve over time, and we don't have one yet. So especially AI with its not deterministic nature, even though hallucination in a good workflow isn't a big issue anymore, understanding what a good workflow is for your context is very hard, because even though I find it for myself, right, or we found it in our company, which was a way of more than 1 year of trial and error and paying a lot of money, and I saw that this exact process is not 100% replicatable on others. It's simply not working, especially team structures. It is so tied to the humans you're working with. If you have 10 engineers who are not sitting next to each other, it's a totally different thing having 5 engineers working all day long in one team monotasking, and doing a lot of pair programming. Suddenly AI doesn't make a lot of sense there at all, right? Or it does, but differently. And when you have isolated people in agencies just working down tickets, AI is actually used to generate, right? And in other teams, it's actually only used for planning and research tasks. So, or testing. And it's different.
And I see a lot more of collaboration, of like a pair being on a call, and then one of them has Claude open, and they are putting Claude into this position of interviewing them, right? So they're using Claude as a sort of ad hoc brainstorming partner, and then
they both tell, and one Claude is actually acting. That's
yes.
Yeah, that is how is it called? It's not pair programming. It's actually pair programming new version 2.0, where you have 2 people tell and having high level overview while one is writing, and you don't need to take care of the writing because it's called code. It's doing it a different way.
And just to be clear, you might not be generating code. You might be still in that design step of we need to agree on what we're shipping today and what we're not shipping today, or we need to separate out.
The execution step is anyway something you don't really need to sit in front of if you have done a good planning job.
Yeah, I mean, I want that we can do on a separate episode, but for the most part, the brain power that you're using to turn your product design or your requirement document into steps, into slices, into a release plan, into actual code, into actual feedback cycles, into actual learnings, into improvements, that's still important. And no amount of coding automation will make that process easier. If anything, you now have more data to ingest, so you like the bar is higher, where you can have bigger impact if you take it even more seriously. But in general, the Claude is not very good at that part of the sort of brain juicing part of splitting it up correctly. Yet, maybe next year, maybe next year it'll be better. But as today, the most sort of good, the most productivity enabling behavior you can display as a software engineer is to slice your work. It's to slice your features. It's to slice your plan in such a way that you can move things around in a way that allows the critical pieces to surface to the user sooner, so that you can close the feedback loop sooner, so that you can adjust your plan sooner. Like ultimately, that is the part of why we design. We want to design a process that allows us to move around things as much as possible, rather than having like a perfect rigid thing that we can follow blindly. People we had a spec-driven development episode last week. The whole point of having executable design is so that we can speed this process up, so that we can improve the plan. It's not about creating a rigid plan that I can then go for a coffee, and then I can come back and Claude has programmed out my entire system. Because I want to be there when Claude interrupts and says, hey, okay, I tried 10 iterations of this. This is what it looks like. It's not as good as we thought it was. So we need to adjust our plan. We need to go back. And that's what you need the human for. Now, some decisions it can explode and expand very quickly, doing pattern matching, migrations, certain structural refactorings on a very large scale in a code base. That it's good for. It's very good for. But generally, you want that sort of interruption. I think engineering leaders nowadays, at least in the past few months that I've spoken to, their incentives lean a little bit too much towards forcing developers to work in a way where they expect deterministic plan following from AI coding tools that would allow them to sort of parallelize their workflow or sort of create some productivity or some velocity improvements that have nothing to do with them using their brain. And it's the exact opposite. Like, we should be using these tools to get enriched data to us sooner, which means that if we deploy something and it doesn't compile, that is the process we want to speed up. Not it going spinning in the background for 2 hours and then figuring out without us. I don't find it useful.
Let's wrap up.
Cool.
Good. Actually, we wrapped up. Thanks again, 𝗲𝗲. Was a good conversation. You said that lovely conversation. Glad I stumbled upon it. Yeah, that's usually how the people get into our shows.
You stumble upon it.
People stumble in. It's like, yeah, this.
That's cool. That's cool. We had a lot of nice organic conversations of people just coming in because they saw something interesting in the title and they come chat it.
It's hard these days to get a stream up and running and become visible because there are a lot out there and the algorithms don't really push streams. So
yeah,
you could pay money for that, but not what we want to do right now. So yeah, we need to live with what we do right now. So feel free to subscribe to Substack and YouTube. Next week you can get emails as well externally from all events we do, but that's not this week. On Substack you
next
get
week you're on vacation, right?
I think so, but I think we could do something maybe not on Wednesday.
Okay. We need to discuss that this week.
Yeah, we need
to. Okay. Thank you, 𝗲𝗲. We can talk about it next time. 𝗲𝗲 went into a little bit more technical details. Yeah, we can definitely discuss that next time on the stream if you show up with us.
It's good, yeah?
Good.
Good. Goodbye.
Thank you, Adrian. Goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye, everyone.